we had some themes that we were, I think, largely expecting. We heard about climate change. We heard about Indigenous reconciliation. We heard about health and safety, which interestingly was a combination of gun control and pharmacare. Under one umbrella. We also heard about a renewed commitment to peacekeeping and NATO missions. Interesting, because the government had promised that in 2015. They really hadn't done a lot on peacekeeping in particular. There was one mission with 2 rotations, very limited number, and no sign of a new commitment on the horizon. But I believe David can join us now. David, you listened to that speech. What stood out to you as the key points?
Well, it's really you can have your cake, Canada, and you can eat it. We're going to do everything. We're going to be aggressive on fighting climate change, a commitment to getting to net zero on emissions by 2050. Wait, there's more. We're going to cut your cell phone bill by 25%. Wait, there's more. You're going to get a huge income tax cut. Wait, there's more. We're going to bring all our laws in line with the United Nations rights, UNDRIP, the rights of Indigenous peoples. And I'll read you this line to remind you, all that as they pursue a responsible fiscal strategy. Something's got to give here, folks. I don't think that we can have our cake and eat it all here. It's going to be in the implementation. Let's take pharmacare right off the bat. There was the commitment to pharmacare in here. That's great for the NDP. They want that. But don't forget, the Bloc Québécois earlier today, their leader, Yves-Francois Blanchet, saying he's going to stand up for Quebec. Quebec doesn't want any part of national programs. It wants the cash. It'll want to opt out and do its own. Will a Liberal government do that? Liberal governments traditionally have been very inflexible federalists. Conservatives may be a little more flexible. I mean, that's just one hurdle. So lots of aspirational stuff in here, that all sorts of stuff on the broad things, I think a lot of parties can agree on. But again, the devil's definitely going to be in the details. And again, all to do that in a responsible fiscal strategy. That's going to be tough.
Richard, you've had a chance to listen to the throne speech, and we've had a chance to read it now that it's out. We've all been going through it and making notes. How do you think the government did on this first foray out to show their intentions?
I think pretty well. I mean, as my colleagues have observed, speech that throw on their very general and high-principled things. But I thought it struck the tone of humility that I think Canadians were looking for and the government was trying to do. It certainly struck the tone of collaboration. Those common ground words that said, as we said here before, that there's a lot actually, in spite of our view that there's a lot to divide parties, and we see that in the election campaign and the attacks, there's a lot of common ground. So that in minority parliaments some of our minority parliaments have worked and given us some of our great social reforms in the country. It won't be easy work, and it's much easier to have a majority, but there is no reason why, if people that of goodwill put their minds together, that you can't achieve some pretty ambitious programs. And I thought, I guess the last thing I would say is they did set out their 5 themes: Indigenous reconciliation, safe and healthy communities, helping the middle class, sort of Canada's position in the world, and climate change. All 5 of those things were in there, and there was probably enough meat from a speech from the throne sort of standard for us to say, okay, well, they've got some things to put in their budget. They've got some things they've got to fund. They've got some work to do with the opposition parties. I thought they did their job today.
Emily, a lot in here for the NDP. Do you think that Mr. Singh and the NDP caucus will be satisfied with what the government has offered up in terms of collaboration?
I mean, I think there's a lot of positive signals. Again, it'll really come down to what the details look like, but absolutely, I mean, really thrilled to hear a commitment to implementing the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, building on the lead of the BC government recently enacting legislation, signaling, take it with a grain of salt, but signaling a willingness to look at things like dental care, something that really resonated with a lot of voters during the election. No doubt, I think it went even beyond tone. It was almost a little much with the collaboration work together. Oh, by the way, let's also collaborate. And also, to me, had a little bit of a tone of kind of finger wagging at the opposition as well. Like, remember, we all need to work together here. But, I think that's what Canadians want. So it's nice to see that. It's not surprising. We all kind of saw that.
Never forget that it's an honor to sit in this Parliament. Prove to Canadians that you are worthy holders of these seats and worthy stewards of this place.
Right, and invoking Lester B. Pearson and really,
They want to prove that themselves as well going forward.
Well, advice best given to yourself as well.
And I think that's kind of one of the really important key points, because this is a Prime Minister who does like to talk a lot about listening and consulting and collaborating, but doesn't always execute those things as well as a lot of people would like. So, it's one thing to say, I'm listening, but are you hearing what people are saying, and are you actually acting on the feedback that you're getting? So a lot of these things will be to look at. I'll admit I was a little surprised to see a reference to the space-time continuum and the planetary spaceship.
Earth is a spaceship? Yeah.
Apropos maybe with
was that
coming
a
from the
reference
Governor
to Elizabeth
General.
May?
Maybe.
Didn't she make a comment like that on the campaign trail?
She did talk a bit about this, planetary spaceship, but also with the Governor General herself having had a previous career as an astronaut, kind of maybe made some sense. But interesting little flourish there for sure.
That has nothing, that was not in any way, didn't come from legalization of marijuana, those two kind of space-time continuum things. I don't think that's where it's from.
I just want to throw to David for a moment because he has some official Conservative reaction. He is with Erin O'Toole. David, take it away.
Well, I don't know if it's official Conservative reaction, but it's certainly the reaction of a Conservative. I'll put it that way, Aaron. You saw the speech. I described it as a you can have your cake and eat it too kind of speech. A lot of things that everybody wants, but to do it in a responsible fiscal strategy. I guess the details will be in the implementation?
It's all about implementation. They sprinkled a bunch of stuff around, no detail. It sounded more campaign-like. And on some of the things like climate change, we'd be willing to see a real plan. Reducing emissions is important, and the tax is not the only way you're going to do that. So really they have to start talking substance, not just green jobs and sort of platitudes. We'd like to see some real tangible plans that a minority parliament could work on.
And of course it is a campaign in the sense it's looking for 338 votes now instead of 33 million. The one thing that I noted was the first thing we're going to do, I think that was the phrase, our first act will be a tax cut. And I know that's something your party campaigned on as well, as a broad income tax cut. Could you see Conservatives supporting tax relief?
We'll have to see that. Certainly there was a number of things where it seemed like they were going to do that, but then they said they're excluding some people. They also made reference to tax fairness. And the last time they used that line, Minister Morneau, who just walked by us, is when they attacked small business and had these proposals that brought small business owners, family businesses, entrepreneurs up in arms about their future. They don't have a pension. All of their stuff is tied into their small business or their farm. So that whenever I hear the Liberals promise a lot of spending and then say we're going to work on tax fairness, it usually means they're going after small business. So we will have to see. Certainly affordability is something all parties talked about in the last election, but we also need people working in the private sector. And this is the big thing I don't see from this government. There was literally nothing on the economy apart from talk of the middle class. Well, middle class people need good jobs first and foremost.
All right, Erin O'Toole, Conservative MP from Durham. Congratulations on your re-election and good luck in the 43rd Parliament.
Thank you, David.
All right, we'll take it back to you, Mercedes.
Thanks, David, and thank you, Erin. I want to throw to Fred. Fred, this is a speech that had a lot in it, I think, if you're the NDP or the Greens. Maybe not a lot for the Bloc, but largely staying out of Quebec. I didn't get the sense that there was a lot in here for the Conservatives. It seemed to be a choice to lean, as we expected, more left towards progressive than right towards conservative.
Yeah, Mr. Trudeau's looking at the House of Commons and realizing where he's going to get his allies from, and he's showing to us it's not the Conservative Party. He doesn't want to work with Conservatives. We've been talking about national unity being a major problem right now, a major issue, an economic-driven issue in Alberta and Saskatchewan with the oil sector, and there was not one mention of oil, gas, or pipelines in this speech. And this is an issue that affects all Canadians across the board. I'm from Nova Scotia. There's a lot of family and friends that depend on work out there, and they're hurting right now across the board on this. So it is disappointing to see this, that Mr. Trudeau has, it appears he's abandoning this issue, and he's not willing to work on this.
And Richard, I was a little bit surprised that we didn't hear anything about that. The other thing I didn't think I heard a lot about was Alberta and Saskatchewan. They've been talking a lot about the outreach there and making those provinces feel included. If I'm looking through this speech, I'm not sure that I saw a lot that really jumps out as an olive branch to those provinces.
Yeah, again, speech from the thrones are not particularly specific. They are more sort of attitudinal and principles-based. But I would say a couple things in response. There was talk of unity in there, and that the common ground and the need to work together, that could be applied to to folks in the prairie provinces. On the issue of oil and gas, the speech and throne did say, underline its commitment to much more ambitious climate change targets, net zero by 2050, and said at the same time will be dogged with the same degree of energy towards natural resource projects. Just today, Minister O'Regan, who's the Minister of Natural Resources, put out an announcement of the progress on building TMX. So there are literally pipes on the ground about to go in the ground to build the new pipeline. So I don't think it's right. I think our viewers should know that project is going ahead and is being built by the government of Canada. It wasn't the government of Alberta that took over the TMX pipeline. It wasn't the government of Saskatchewan that took it over. It was the government of Canada that did that.
But I think some of the feedback that we hear often from our viewers out west and the frustration is that is a passing reference to one pipeline. And
yes.
I don't think anybody believes that TMX will be enough to save the oil industry.
No.
So there wasn't anything beyond that. Is that a problem, or is that the decision that this government is taking about the path, that they will remain committed to that one pipeline, but there is not going to be further development?
I think there'll be further development, but I think where you will see, this is a prediction, where you'll see the government is trying to work with the provincial governments out there to help not only the adjustment in terms of to renewable energies, but finding ways to better extract those things. Obviously, a pipeline to Tidewater is one key thing, but as you suggested, that's not going to solve all the problems. There is a world price of oil problem that is not created in Canada and is not something that we're going to have to work around. We're going to have to find ways to extract that are both more cost efficient and more environmentally benign. That work's being done. There's people in the sector doing that work right now. But there are some things which are beyond our control, one of which is it is a high emission resource. And secondly, we have a problem with the world price of oil. At the price we have right now, it is hard to get the investment that we need in Western Canada to get the kind of prosperity that we used to have out there.
Well, I know at Global News, our Dallas Flexhog, who's out in Calgary, has been in Texas looking at the number of Canadians who have moved there and followed oil down there, and they're not looking at coming back in many cases. But I want to turn to one other key issue in this speech, and that is pharmacare. And Emily, there is this mention of it, and I want to go exactly back to what the government had to say about it, because it's very clear. I'm going to flip to it so we get it exactly. The implementation of national pharmacare so that Canadians have the drug coverage they need. They say it's the missing piece of universal health care, but there's a lot of different versions of how pharmacare could look and no commitment to one. What do you make of how broadly they've defined pharmacare? Because it could be only for those who need it most. It could be universal pharmacare, since they've said universal health care, but they haven't said universal pharmacare. How do you interpret that?
This is exactly what they did during the election campaign as well. They were very slippery with language, happy to let people think they were talking about universal single-payer pharmacare when actually they're a little bit vague, and I think that vagueness is persisting here, so that it will come down, I guess, to negotiations with the provinces, with other parties. It would have really been nice to have seen a firmer, more direct commitment to the kind of pharmacare that New Democrats are advocating for. So to me, this is the same kind of mealy-mouthed language that they hope will give confidence to people that are looking for universal health care, that they hear the word, or pharmacare, they hear the word universal, they hear the word pharmacare. But I do think, we need to be cautious when we're looking at that commitment, because I wouldn't characterize that as the kind of commitment that New Democrats are looking for. But nor does it exclude what we're asking for either, right? So it's sufficiently generic that I guess it gives them something to build on. But this is where I think we need to be particularly cautious, because we've been down this road before with Liberal governments in the past.